Round one, fight! Coming next year is a documentary celebrating Street Fighter 2. Step back in time to the early 90s and relive the glory days when the fighting genre and the arcades changed forever. Check out the Kickstarter link below and help make this project become a reality. Hello everyone, it's Oliver here. I'm back with a new commentary, and my co-host on this podcast is Michael Peristeris, who you may remember from the Mad Max commentaries. Today we are discussing Enter the Dragon, one of the most important martial arts movies ever made. So, how are you doing, Michael?
I'm doing pretty well actually, thanks Oliver, not too bad at all, considering all things.
yeah, definitely.
We're back at it again. 2020 just doesn't seem to want to go away.
No, it doesn't. Bloody annoying. Hopefully, early next year we'll get things back to normal. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed, but I don't know, man. I'm thinking it's all going to end like Temple of Doom, where Indiana Jones goes into the plane and says goodbye, and it's 2020 all over again. Nice try, Lao Sheikh. Bang, close the door, 2020 all over again.
Okay, folks, we are watching the most recent cut of the film, which includes the scene where Bruce talks to his master, a scene that was used in Game of Death 2, but the scene was later restored into Enter the Dragon. So if you wish to sync this commentary with your own copy of the film, put the timestamp to 0 and press play now. So Michael,
yep.
Did you see this film at a very young age, or was it kind of later on you sort of became aware of Bruce Lee?
This was probably the very first film I ever saw on VHS, probably at age 3 or 4. Wow. And to show how old I am, we rented it from a gas station. That's how... No, but I mean, that was back in... Because I grew up in a small country town in Australia. We didn't have VHS back then. We didn't have stores. We had gas station and had like 20 videos. And luckily this guy, which was across the street from my dad's takeaway shop, had just like all the 5 of the Bruce Lee movies. You know, Big Boss, Way of the Dragon, Fist of Fury, Game of Death, and the Dragon, and so forth. And that's one of the things where at the end of the day, at the end of the working day, we'd pick up a copy, we'd take it home, and we watch it as a group. All my cousins, the oldies and so forth, we'd watch it at the end of the night. So that was my introduction, was VHS tape, and that goes far back as I can remember. I'll say it's the first one I've ever seen on tape.
This was, obviously, when they shot this movie, this is the last scene they shot.
Yeah.
With Bruce on camera. So this is, what we're seeing is essentially an MMA fight with the sort of gloves they're wearing. Sammo Hung as well, who also go on to sort of shoot some of the action scenes in Game of Death, the sort of the butchered kind of movie in 1978.
Sammo. I still remember as a kid, me and the others would say, oh, what can Sammo do? Look at this overweight. I don't want to say the word fatty, but look at this fatty can do. When he did this move here, we're like, oh, okay, he's actually got moves. He's not bad. He's
the one martial artist who's like overweight, but he can do flips and backflips. It's crazy.
And that's to his benefit because it gives him more strength anyway. It gives him more energy.
I mean, obviously, Bruce Lee is doubled, isn't he, for the sort of
flips,
backflips and sort of jumping back onto his feet, I think. Because of his back issues, he was kind of less acrobatic, as it were. Yeah,
Bruce, one thing that we've talked about before, Bruce is a bit aggressive with his body in a lot of respects where he thought, okay, this is a good idea. One of the things he did for his that damaged his back was he did an exercise called Good Mornings. I don't know if you're aware of that. He was actually, if I'm not mistaken, he was actually working out with Kareem at the time.
Oh, wow.
This is back like towards, I think, 69, 70. And Good Mornings basically is get weights and a barbell and you put on your back of your neck and you lean forward and up.
Oh.
And you've got to do that. That's a very dangerous exercise. You've got to warm up. And Bruce didn't warm up on that one at all. He just went heavy weights, did it, tore his sacral nerve, and the rest is, he just spent, I think, 6 months in bed. It's just amazing. But that, damaged his life for the rest of his life. He had pain.
So this scene here, also, it was excised from the original cut and sort of restored later on, and as I mentioned at the beginning, was kind of thrown into Game of Death as the sequel, Game of Death 2, for the international market to sort of to show that Bruce Lee was still around or whatever, and sort of link it to the Tower of Death, which was kind of later renamed, which is actually a really good film. Has nothing to do with Bruce Lee, but obviously, me and Michael were sort of discussing sort of the audio of this because obviously they've redubbed this, and the original audio of this sequence is online, and I think Bruce, the audio of Bruce is not very good, but it's delivered very well. It sort of syncs better, I think.
It sounds like he said it on the phone, so I'm thinking maybe they said, oh look, we didn't get the audio dubbing for that, let's try and do it on the phone, because it just sounds like he's talking over the phone, but it's in sync with his dubbing, but then again, it's just weird. Probably something went wrong, but it's just so much better delivery. but it's just the audio's crap.
Yeah, obviously the actor on the left here, he's obviously popped up in Bloodsport. Van Damme's, he trains Van Damme, and he's
Roy Chow.
In Temple of Doom, isn't he, as well?
Yeah, another reference. Lao Shay, yeah. So there, it's all linked. It's all linked.
Obviously, the writer of this, he had taken inspiration from Ian Fleming's book, Dr. No.
Michael Allen.
And obviously, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think he did adaptation work on Flash Gordon in 1980. When you watch it, it feels very much like a James Bond movie as well. So not knowing that it was, he was inspired by Dr. No, you still get the sense that it is kind of like a James Bond film. He gets his mission, essentially by M, and then goes off and does it.
And people criticize even back then. They said it feels a bit like a James Bond film, where it's like, look, it doesn't really matter because I think. Yeah, it just works so well in that context where it's just trying to appeal to a more international audience, which kind of the reason why it didn't appeal probably to the Hong Kong audience, where we're used to Bruce being more of the underdog coming in, not foreigner, but coming back home, the guy coming back home to avenge, to set right, for his family. But here it's a bit more of a man on a mission, so it kind of didn't work.
Well, because Fist of Fury is probably one of my other sort of favourites of Bruce Lee's films, which has that sort of political kind of clash of the Chinese and Japanese.
Big Boss is mine.
And obviously with this film, they're clearly showing that this is an action film. Bruce Lee's the star. He is the hero. Yep. There's no underdog stuff. He is like a trained martial artist agent. So it sets it out. The story is so simple, but it's so effective at the same time, and I think it kind of works in its favour. There's no backstory really to Bruce Lee's character. He's just you've kind of shown his skills, and then he's being given this kind of mission. And I kind of like that. And obviously Warner Brothers were so desperate to sort of kickstart a franchise after this film was finished, because they knew how big Bruce Lee was going to be, and there's so many. Bruce was getting so many offers from different companies, to sort of distribution companies, to sort of make films with them, and he was literally having like cash delivered to his door, to sort of sign up with us, please. And took out life insurance as well, and had to. I think to sort of get his insurance, he had to say he didn't take drugs, which was a lie.
No, going back to what you're mentioning about Lee's character not having a backstory, you also mentioned A Game of Death 2. They had a deleted scene there where he walks into the room that he eventually goes to, and he picks up a book that has his portrait on the back. So it's a book that his character wrote in the movie. So there is a little bit of a backstory where Bruce's character Lee is actually a successful martial arts writer as well. So he's actually probably into wealth, if I'm not mistaken. He's probably successful. You could even say Ian Fleming type person, a man of adventures type situation where, he's a writer, but he makes a good living out of it.
There's great moments in this movie where there is humour that generally does work. It's obviously the training his student. And obviously the great spoof movie, Kentucky Fried Movie, did a wonderful spoof on Enter the Dragon.
Fistful of Yen.
Fistful of Yen, yeah. What was that?
This is not a charade. Then he kicks the shit out of him.
It's when he it's a wonderful spoof, and I love the bit when he bumps into the dog and he taps the dog and he goes, "What was that?"
That was Dr. Clunt, take him to Detroit. No. It's the running gag.
This is a great little moment here because Bruce's character kind of then on doesn't really talk much throughout the film. He has a few bit discussions with his contact there, the lady who sort of gives him information. But this is the moment where he can inject his philosophies.
Yeah, this is very much Bruce Lee injecting his point of view into the script.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a rumor that Michael Allen had a bit of an issue with Bruce Lee in injecting some of this, so he purposely changed the name of the character of Braithwaite to sound like very difficult for an Asian man to say. So he kind of did that, I think, on purpose to him, which is kind of an issue. If that's true, it's a bit of a, because this is a nice little injection of Bruce's philosophy.
Oh yeah, it works wonders. And now we're going to sort of kick in soon to the iconic kind of title sequence. I love this moment actually here where he goes, never bow and taking your eyes off your opponent. I thought was great.
You got the little nod, and then we got the coming in. The great score with Bruce's screams, Lala Schifrin, Enter the Dragon. It's like, wow.
This is obviously Brett Ratner tried to sort of recreate, doesn't he, this opening sequence for Rush Hour as a sort of...
Yeah, and he uses Layla Schifrin as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Quite a number of films actually try to sort of replicate this kind of opening sequence. Or Bloodsport as well is very similar, capturing a sort of, Hong Kong streets as sort of Van Damme sort of walks around the city, and we see also replicated with Jim Kelly and John Saxon in this.
A bit of a cut sequence there. If you just quickly notice, I just missed. There's ladies running around in yellow jumpers, whatever you want to call it, tracksuits of Mr. Han. So there's a cut subplot there where they're going around delivering the invitations to the fighters.
Oh.
So you'll notice you'll notice quickly a bit later on within this montage, one of them will pass on the motorbike. She'll pass through the frame. So you only get two shots of it, but that's a subplot that got cut out.
That's interesting. Never noticed that. Because obviously, as I just literally highlighted Bloodsport, that was doing a sequence where they were delivering out the invitations, weren't they?
Yeah, so Bloodsport copies a lot from this. People have admitted, like, they've got some of the same actors, some of the same lines, but brick don't hit back. It's obvious what that's from.
Always made me chuckle, that line.
I visited, on my way to Australia one time, I stopped by Hong Kong, and I was there for like 12 hours, and I went... it's nothing like it is now. It's changed a lot, and this was back in like 2013. But I literally had to put on my headphones and listen to this song as I'm walking around through the streets of Hong Kong.
Strutting around.
Oh, yeah, I just said, why not? I feel like Jim Kelly, just that cool swagger, just going around. Like,
I love the sort of... It shows you that sort of John Saxon's character. He's kind of just like... very wealthy. But also he's in debt as well. He's in debt. That's why he's kind of on the run from these guys. But he lives a high lifestyle.
The drunken gambler. That's right. Who might you be? He's got that successful thing about him, but it's just the gambling junkie.
It was interesting. I didn't know that John Saxon had trained in martial arts. I mean, he on camera, he's always thought, well, Bruce Lee's kind of trained him beforehand to sort of show that what he can, to just demonstrate he can fight. But he had training in judo and jiu-jitsu, and I think after the movie he very much sort of stepped away from doing any sort of action because he felt it was very difficult and tiring to do.
I think that hurt him. Notice the guy who's doing the boards that's hitting Bob Wall?
Yeah.
That's the Black Star Ninja from American Ninja.
Oh man, awesome.
That's Yamashita, if I'm not mistaken.
Good old Bob Wall.
Bob Wall.
His best fighting is probably in Game of Death, actually, when they reshot stuff with Sammo Hung. Directing with the sort of the double of Bruce Lee, but Bob Wall was always, his technique was never super refined on camera. I think there is that sort of argument about how well you can fight in reality and on screen, and I think that sort of may fall in line with, say, Jim Kelly, whose style isn't as finesse as Bruce's.
Bob, I don't know if you know this, Bob had an interesting career later on as well. He managed Dennis Alexio. No, I don't know who that is, actually. He played the brother of Jean-Claude Van Damme in Kickboxer, the guy that got paralyzed.
Oh, right, yes.
Bob Wall would manage him. And in a famous bout, it's going a bit off deviation, but Dennis Alexio fought in Australia under management of Bob Wall, Stan the Man Logyanidis. It was a famous fight where, they wanted to trying to get him together. And the fight lasted 6 seconds, where Stan kicked Dennis in the shin or the leg, and he broke his femur. And it's on the line. And when he puts his foot down, you can see his leg bend in half. And
oh my God.
Yeah, it's very... But Bob made this massive complaint saying the mat was soft, because that was for the championship, and Stan the Man won the championship. And Bob Wall said, look, the mats were soft. We complained about it before, and that led to the leg breaking. So they changed it to no contest. So he didn't lose, technically, if I'm not mistaken. But that was one of the things Bob Wall sort of like claimed to fame in connection with Van Damme, you could say, where Dennis Alexio broke his leg.
I do love this moment here where he's sort of laying out the mission. He's sort of with Han. He's like, there's no guns are allowed because he had a bad experience. I presume his hand was shot off.
I had a different presumption. I always thought he tried guns and it blew up in his hand. I always had that assumption. I never assumed his hand got shot off. But again, it's... But
then his hand is like, his hand itself is, we see it displayed later on, this kind of bone hand. So it implies that, well, to me, it would seem like it's been chopped off.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. It's like, it's a bit weird for a gunshot, but I never, as a kid, even as a kid, I put two and two together. He's fearful of guns, so his hand got blown off. But I always thought a gun blew up in his hand.
I like the moment here where it's like where Bruce says, why don't someone walk in with a 45 and bang. It's like it shows. There's a great little moment there that says like, I don't need to go in and use my fists and leg kicks, whatever. I can just like shoot them.
Bruce was a pragmatist. That's the thing about Bruce. He says, why should I punch someone if for self-defense if a gun will do just as well? So he was never, as much as he's an advocate for self-defense, he was always like, whatever's going to protect you, do it. If you can't fight and you're in a situation when someone's trying to kill you and you have the opportunity, but that's a different subject. But even in other interviews, he had the famous interview, I can't remember the one where he talks about, be water and be all this, where he even says, nowadays you don't go around kicking and punching people, because if you do, he does the hand gesture where someone pulls out a gun and that's it.
Yeah.
He says, I don't care how good you are. Like if someone got a gun, you're finished. And that's why he talks about it's very hard to do a contemporary martial arts film, which he kind of bridged that gap in a way more better than anyone else in this film.
What did you make of Robert Klaus as a director? Because as we know, doing the In Search of Last Action Heroes, Cynthia Rothrock, had worked with Robert Klaus on the Shana O'Brien films, and he just did Jim Carter, Jim Catter, whatever. And he's online. It says he was deaf, and I've seen one interview with him, and he doesn't sound like he is deaf.
Probably in one ear, because it's a bit odd that. But asking that question, a good example, I think the best example to see what Bruce brought and what Robert Klaus brought. Go watch the 1974 Jim Kelly Black Belt Jones, because that's more or less the same production crew, everything, the American production crew, not Hong Kong. And Jim Kelly's in that. It's like literally the year later. And you can see the quality's not there. It's not bad, but it's not into the Dragon quality for no matter what, the styling, the directing, the fighting. It's just not there.
Because, if you watch bits of China O'Brien, the fight scenes are just like covered in one long master shot, and it doesn't intercut to anything else. It's very kind of bland. And this has those kind of insert shots, but I think because of Bruce and how dynamic he is on camera, and his direction there, they've put the camera in the right place. Yeah. And it just kind of works. There is this kind of, a film that's, relatively cheap production, a sort of, co-production between Golden Harvest and Warner Brothers. It's, made so much money over the years. It's been a huge kind of just like money pot for Warner Brothers.
Oh, yeah. And it's not a cheap looking film by any means. Like, it looks good. It's like the camera is
photographed.
I should have researched a bit more who the camera, the DP and so forth was, but this is great cinematography. Like the camera work and everything, it's crisp. It's so fresh, and the update from the original copy is just so good.
Yeah, if you look at the sort of the Hong Kong productions, the film grading and the film stock it always felt a little bit rough and cheap, and this is actually Warner Brothers film stock, and they spent money on that, and it looks good. So that's why, out of all those sort of Bruce Lee movies, because there's only a small selection of them, Enter the Dragon ends up looking the most polished in that regard. Yeah,
and here we got Angela Mount, like she's just amazing. She's just an amazing fighter, just incredible. Like, she's playing Su Lin. Yeah, she's playing Bruce Lee's sister. And even as a kid, I like this. I'm thinking, wow, look at this. She can really fight. But again, this is keeping in realism. As a female fighter, she's got the technique, but she doesn't have the strength to put these men down. And that's kind of like the biggest problem here is, like, obviously anybody would not do well in a circumstance where you got 7, 8 guys. But, I mean, the technique, if she was like, like the technique is just so on par, so great. And just, she looks great on camera.
The weird thing is, like, Bob Wall looks just like my dad.
Okay.
In the 70s, 1970s. My dad, the same hair, same beard. I'm just like, that looks like my bloody dad. It's weird. I've got to find it and sort of crop his head in. Like a photo of Bob Wall.
This here always, ow. I always felt that. I could feel like bang as the guy has hit his head a few times here and there, running into walls. Yeah. No,
because Bey Logan had said that this isn't really a sort of kung fu movie. There was little kung fu going on. I suppose in the sense that there is, it's just more of a punch, kick, and get rid of them quickly sort of attempt. Where Bruce Lee's films had moments of sort of Wing Chun thrown in and his style thrown in, but it was always a quick like power punch or kick to sort of take people down to show his core strength.
Bruce was always very smart, and like I saw recently a video of Dan Inosanto back in like 1982, whatever, and he's talking about, Bruce's art that he eventually developed where it's very direct and it doesn't look good on camera. If someone's coming at you, you're not going to do these flailing kicks, whatever. If you've got a chance, you stomp on his feet, then poke him in the eye. You know, it's very, again, that goes back to Bruce being practical. In a fight, your idea is not to look good, it's to get out of there as quick as possible.
Yeah, because Dan's done quite a few demonstrations where it would just be like, you have a traditional way of sort of maybe parrying a punch, and suddenly just goes into like traditional American boxing, you know, just completely switch.
Bruce was amazing at that. He loved to utilize whatever he could, because his older brother, Peter, I think, was a champion fencer. And fencing had a specific stance where it was very straight, direct forward. It wasn't side to side. It was like back and forth in a straight line. And Bruce utilized that where it says, well, for striking and jabbing, it's always so good like to be as quick and effective and efficient as possible. And that's one of the things where with Bruce, he tried to integrate it in films, but he knew what also made the audience excited.
Yes, it's those high-flying kicks. And
yeah,
just,
it's like, it's a lot of that stuff as well, like the fancy stuff. I've seen some behind-the-scene photos of this scene here, what she does, and there's a bit where she's sitting on top of the camera to get this POV shot. It's not even a POV shot, actually. It's because it's from... Is it from
the POV of her stomach?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's not a POV. Yeah, because it's a POV from her stomach. Yeah, literally, look at it. It's not a... That's an odd POV now that I think about it. Thanks, Oliver. You ruined it for me. But yeah, this, for me, even like, wow. Thought just to see something like that was just... Especially as a kid, you're thinking, look at that.
What's another film that completely rips off rips off Enter the Dragon is Mortal Kombat, you know, which is completely just you know, take the same plot and just go and just.
Well, they shot themselves in the foot because the game basically was a rip off of Enter the Dragon.
Yeah,
and the movie had no choice. Where it's like, well, we have to kind of rip off Enter the Dragon. So it's like
every couple of years there's a kind of a remake, essentially, of Enter the Dragon, isn't it? You know. But I do like, you know, those sort of tournament movies, and they're always fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
But you always kind of know going in that the main hero is going to win. You know, it's predictable in that way, but there's always room for it.
It's always room for it, but it's, again, that's one of... Okay, this is going back. This is one of the reasons why, as much as I love Enter the Dragon, it's not my favourite Bruce Lee film, because at this stage... You know who he is. You know he's the untouchable. You know he's unbeatable. There are a lot of things. He is, by this stage, he's become more or less a Superman. And don't get me wrong, I still love the film. The technique is second to none. It is more of a Bruce Lee film than his other films, for example. He's got more of his fingerprints on it, what do you even call it, his stamps on it, which is what we go back to Robert Klaus, where without Bruce, you can see the difference in Robert Klaus and this. And in comparing Black Belt Jones with this, you can know Bruce Lee really had a real hands-on thing on it. And... That's the thing, but for me, I kind of like the Big Boss is still, the more years go by, the more I like Big Boss more and more. But he is that underdog, and he's got one of the things that Bruce has always been good at is being vicious. And by vicious, I mean he just brings in that raw emotion where you can feel it. It's that
look in his eye, isn't it? You just, you know, for a guy, you know, he's quite short, Bruce Lee, but once, you know, if that, I get it on camera, when he looks at you, that intensity, you shit your pants.
How short is short? Because I'm exactly the same height as Bruce Lee. What are you saying there, Oliver?
You're short, Michael.
Well, no, ever since I moved to UK, I get it. Like, I'm like, when I was in Greece, I'm like, oh.
I'm a bit too tall, really.
No, when I was in Greece, 5'7" was average. I'm thinking, okay, once I moved to UK, I'm like, oh.
Come to England with the land of the giants.
Yeah, the ladies tower over me. I'm saying, look, I'm not biased. I got no problem with height, you know. But they're a bit more like, how are you doing down there? Like, pretty good. But where was I? I lost my spot. Eddie Murphy, you were talking about Bruce Lee's appeal. Eddie Murphy has gone on to quote, it was Bruce Lee that made him an actor, because one of the things, in a respect that Eddie Murphy didn't know how to act when he do 48 hours. And he had no reference point. So it's like, okay, he was into comedy, but it was an action film. So he took the look that Bruce Lee made, especially in Fist of Fury. If you look at the scene in the dojo where he's looking around, where his eyes are going left and right, you look at a scene, Eddie Murphy took that, and he took that glance, he took that stare, and he used that, and no one picked it up, and I didn't pick it up until Eddie Murphy said it in an interview like about 10 years ago. He said, if you'd notice, I'm doing Bruce Lee, and you go back, oh, this is 100% right. And I've saw video photos, stills, but I haven't found the clip of Eddie Murphy in SNL back in 1982 with David Carradine dressed up as, what's his name from Kung Fu, and he's dressed up as Bruce Lee. Like the proper, he's shirtless and he's got the tracksuit, he's got the hair as well. And I'm like, and they're in a bar fight. I cannot find that clip, and I'd love to see it.
Oh, we got here. Sorry, one of the thugs is Pat Johnson.
Pat Johnson.
Yeah,
who'd show up in
Karate Kid. He's the referee, and he does fight choreography for many movies, including Ninja Turtles, directed by Steve Barron.
Yeah, he's good. He's part of that old guard too, because he was mates with Chuck Norris, Bob Wall, and even Steve McQueen. I think he trained Steve McQueen at one stage, as a few people did, as Chuck Norris got involved, and so did Bruce Lee. But they were part of that rat pack of 70s martial artists.
And stuntmen, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
Mike Stone, Joe Louis, Bruce Lee, and Chuck Norris, and Bob Wall, and so forth, and Pat Johnson.
I suppose you'd say John Saxon's probably, I think to younger people, I suppose people in the 30s, best known for his roles in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably more than likely where everyone did to get the more attention of him. And he was good in that.
To me, I saw him first in this, because reminiscing at the beginning about the first time you saw Enter the Dragon, for me, it was, I taped it off, I think it was BBC Two or something like that. I played it late at night in very early 90s, and I think I was kind of unaware of who Bruce Lee was, and I recorded it, and I thought, wow, this guy's amazing. This guy's like a real Superman.
Yeah.
And my dad, I remember watching it for the first time, my dad walked in and goes, yeah, he's dead. He died, before the film came out. And I was just so gutted, so upset. And this is like 1991 or something.
Wow.
So he'd been dead for years, and I just, at that point, I was so annoyed,
I was lucky because I had the benefit of being the younger of a group of cousins. I was the youngest of a group of cousins, so there was already kids in their teens within the group, and my parents. And the good thing about Bruce, one thing I noticed about Bruce, and especially from the years seeing documentaries, he's got a wide appeal of, he breaks a lot of ethnic gaps. There is no one who says, oh, I don't like Bruce Lee. There's no nationality who's doesn't appeal to it. And he appeals to a lot of foreign nationalities, the African-American community, us migrants from Greeks, from Italy or whatever, to Australia. He represented that underdog sort of thing. And a lot of us there really were into Bruce Lee. So there was never one that was who didn't know. If you were ethnic like me, like son of migrants, even our parents knew who Bruce Lee was. And our parents never said no to watching a Bruce Lee, oh, it's too violent. No, it was that much of it was that important to all of us to that degree.
Oh, well, for sure.
This is roughly, so we got Jim Kelly now. We got his flashback.
Well, Jim Kelly his career didn't really go that far, did it, in terms of an action star? He had a few movies he was in, but he didn't become the next wave of stars, despite his association with this. And it was a bit of a shame, really. I think Ed Bay Logan has talked a lot about Enter the Dragon over the years and felt, Jim should have maybe sort of stuck around for longer with Bruce. Sort of going his own way.
Hong Kong, you mean? Because Bruce was gone, but he should have stuck to Hong Kong, like Cynthia Rothrock. I agree. I think had he stayed in Hong Kong, he probably would have had the trainers there getting more into it, and he probably might have been bigger. He's good in Black Belt Jones, but they try to do a lot of the Bruce Lee thing, where he's like a secret agent for the CIA or a liaison with the CIA on a mission. So it's very similar, but it's against the mob. He's good in that, but.
There was an interesting thing because the BBC had covered this sort of Kung Fu night they did in, I think, the late 90s.
Okay.
And they had interviews with Raymond Chow and so forth. And there was this kind of sense that after Bruce had died, the martial arts kind of market was sort of crumbled because they had no one to sort of be the head lead of it all. And it wasn't until sort of Jackie Chan has sort of, had come into play to sort of give it life again, because after this, a lot of the movies had changed to be more fantastical and sort of people on wires and stuff, which is actually still fun to watch, but it's a different thing altogether compared to Bruce Lee's kind of attempts to be very sort of realistic, I suppose, or break down the barriers.
Well, funny you should mention that, because Robert Klaus would direct Jackie Chan in his initial breakthrough role, which was Battle Creek Brawl. I think that was 1981 or something like that.
Right. So that was before the Cannonball Run.
Yeah, that was before. I think that was either at the same time or just before it. It was roughly about then. And again, this is Robert Klaus. It didn't work. And I didn't mind the film. I saw it as a kid, but it wasn't a Jackie Chan film in that respect.
No. That was the problem. That was the thing with, Jackie Chan's second attempt to sort of, in the 80s, to be a superstar. It didn't work.
It didn't work. And it wasn't until like it was close to his 40s when it was
Rumble in the Bronx that sort of really sold it. That was like 95, 96. That's years later.
Yeah, years later. And we were aware of within my family and group of mates, we knew about Jackie Chan from like Police Story and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We were into that. And again, in Greece, it's just so funny because they still play it on TV. I haven't seen it for a while. The older dubs, the bad English dubs of Jackie Chan movies, dubs. And they're so good. There's one in particular. I just remember even my mum got into it. She was laughing, but not because it was bad, but because they were very specific. It was like, where he's in court, he says, "Oh, what time did the bus came by?" He said, "About 6 o'clock." He said, "Are you sure?" "Oh, I think it was about 5 to 6. Well, let's say 6. The lawyer, the way he delivers that line. Where in the recent American redubbing, they're very literal and they go, "Okay, we'll say 5 to 6." You know, like they change the joke a bit. And it's like you lost some of that joke, so it's a bit weird because they're trying to fix something that wasn't broken.
Well, that's why when I buy something, because they're re-releasing a lot of these Jackie Chan movies now, which is great, like new transfers that look wonderful, and I always want the original English dubs because those are the ones I saw and I sort of fell in love with.
So much fun.
And ones for like Operation Condor or Armor of God and like City Hunter. They're so funny. That actually add an extra level of comedy because of the English dubs is so wonky, but it's it's got a charm to it.
Yeah, like again, Police Story. I'm just remembering another line for it where they stop, like he's protecting that girl, and they had a fake setup where someone was going to try and stab her, and she hits him over the head, and then at the end, the real group come after her, and he says, "Oh, these guys are for real," and she's like, "What about the guy in my apartment?" And he's like, and he says something, "Yeah, but these guys are good," something like that. He just makes a funny joke about that, when the original dub was a bit different, and it was just. Yeah, I love that bit. It's just. Do you
remember seeing the Spider-Man movie Dragon's Challenge?
Yes.
Where he goes to Hong Kong, and that was just like aping Enter the Dragon in areas, as he sort of goes through the sort of the harbour and stuff. Obviously, because Bruce Lee had started this huge craze in the 70s of his Kung Fu mania.
Yeah.
And obviously in the UK they had like all comedy shows were spoofing it like Steps, Toe and Son, and Lenny Henry was a huge fan of like Bruce Lee, and there's obviously Kung Fu Monthly sort of came about at that point, and every issue had Bruce Lee on the front cover just to sell it. I think they wanted to call it Bruce Lee Monthly, but I don't think he said. Do you think the publisher or editor said I don't think the family would be too happy about that?
Yeah,
but like Impact magazine, which I pick up back issues now and again for sort of when I'm covering an action film because it's always got some interesting stuff in there. But Bruce Lee's always in there, even by like the mid-90s there's something on Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee was soul. He was just something that he was always everywhere. There was no one who didn't know who Bruce Lee was. That's so even if people got mistake and say, okay, that's a Bruce Lee film when it was a Bruceploitation film, like
Bruce Lee sort of thing. They changed
Bruce
surname
Lee
slightly.
Yeah, Bruce Lee fights from the grave, whatever. Like I remember, there was one I remember specifically. The cover, it's so like Bat Out of Hell, the way it's drawn, because it's got like Bruce Lee popping out of the grave.
Yeah, I've seen that.
That's so great.
It's such bad taste, isn't it? It's terrible.
It's bad taste, but I mean that's not. You got blaxploitation at that time. Everything was exploitive back time because back then. VHS was coming into its own and film was getting cheaper so people could make films. It wasn't like the old golden age of Hollywood where anyone, you need a production crew. People knew if I got a 16mm camera, I can make anything. And people bought it. And there were a lot of those theatres at night where people would go see for the B-movies that they played.
This guy here, obviously the one person on the boat who's a complete arsehole. And they've cast an Aussie.
That's, what's his name again? I'm just trying to remember. Bloody hell.
I do love his moment when he walks up to Bruce because he goes, "What's your style?"
What's your style?
Yeah, I love it. Because I think that my friend had a Cream album, like Ministry of Sound, had a remix of that sort of dialogue, and it mixed into this kind of slow, like drum bass beat. It was really good.
I got a George Lazenby beat from this guy. I look at this guy, I think of George Lazenby.
He's a bit Lazenby.
Yeah, I mean he's Australian as well, and we just looking at him thinking, okay, they picked him up from Queanbeyan as well. Sorry to Queanbeyan people there. People in Canberra used to always make fun of them that their claim to fame was George Lazenby, and that's it. Because it's a suburb, it's a small town just outside of Canberra.
Because Lazenby was supposed to meet Bruce the day he died.
The night he died. Yeah, he was going to have a part in Game of Death. It was when Lazenby was riding off the coattails of his one stint as James Bond in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So you can kind of imagine. What would have happened?
I don't know what floor he would have been on though. On the
No. He wasn't fighting. From what the story goes, from what I've gathered, it was a group of men on a mission. So they got more than one people. They got like Bruce Lee, who was a former champion, retired. They got the guy that played his cousin in The Big Boss. He was the current champion, and George Lazenby would have paid like an international champion or something like that. And there were supposed to be like 5 or 6 guys, and on the first floor they fight like 50 karate people, something like that, like a group of people, and a few of them get killed. And each level, 1 or 2 of them got killed. So that was kind of where it was going with that, where he was going to play like a second sort of bananas type situation.
Because Kareem was the final boss, wasn't he, in the film? So it would have, I don't know, I think Bruce probably would have gone back and redid a lot of things, I think, if he was going to include other actors, because he was throwing out all sorts of names to be on this kind of in this movie to got this tower.
Yeah, and he only did the last 3 floors, so which is interesting. He had a plan all along, but he did the last 3 floors first. So you got to wonder with that. But again, with Kareem going back, like Kareem being with Bruce Lee on the day that he damaged his back, him and Bruce had always had a good relationship together. They were good mates. They trained together. Like Bruce Lee was his teacher, and he just brought him in. He says, "Look, I want you to be in because you're that tall, you're that formidable." And if you look at the style in Game of Death, because people are not sure what he does, it's very mirror reflective of Bruce's style. And he's the style of the unknown. And the idea is...
He fights Jeet Kune Do at the end.
Yes, he does, because there's one shot in particular where they've got the same handstands. They move almost identical in their positioning. And he's supposed to represent the... I don't want to say the word perfection, because that might be disrespectful to other martial arts, but I think he represents total freedom of restraint. He has no freedom, which is like what Bruce Lee's idea was of Game of Death. Each level represented a level of superiority you have to get past to, and the ultimate challenge was the style of the unknown.
I do like this moment here when they do approach the island and you see John Saxon spots the lady. He's like, "Oh, look at that!" Yeah. And then there's like Bruce is just kind of, next to him, kind of smiling, sort of finding it quite amusing. And it shows you that those two also got chemistry, and they're going to sort of work together, despite they don't know each other, and Bruce is completely separate to him. And it sows the seeds of their friendship.
It does, which is very good. It leads into it. And the thing is, I think just recently found out from Bay Logan commentary that the line "a woman like that can teach you a lot about yourself" was Bruce's line, and he gave it to John. So it would have played like Saxon would have gone like, "Oh, would you look at that?" And then Bruce would have turned to Saxon and said, "A woman like that can teach you a lot about yourself." Which it does work both ways.
Yeah, I ultimately think it works better with John Saxon doing it, because it sort of keeps Bruce's character more. His mission is the focus.
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to less is more, like Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry. Which about the same time just
all those tennis courts, and they've got there to try to get rid of all the markings, haven't they? But
you look at all the best action heroes. Actually, now you think about it, best action heroes have the less dialogue. Mel Gibson in Mad Max 2. Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry, John Rambo, Bruce Lee. So that's the one thing I think a lot of people have missed out on now, where they don't figure it out. Less is more, and I think they've missed that in now recent, where it's got to be flamboyant and acting.
You don't want an action star who's too chatty, basically.
I'm trying to think if there is a movie like that recent years. I can't think. Nice little banquet going on. Some of the food when I was a kid, I thought, yuck. I thought, like, the pig on the spit. I thought, ooh, that's nasty. I remember my dad and the oldies again, like, whoa, that's so yum. That's so delicious. And now that I'm older, I'm thinking, yeah, pig on the spit. Wow. But I mean, this is me. This is a 3 to 4 year old kid who didn't know anything. And don't get me wrong, they got, like, some chicken legs here, something like that. Yeah. But that pig. And again, with the lobster, I didn't know that was lobster. I thought that was some disgusting animal.
I think Bruce makes the right thing and just eats some fruit. It's like if you've got a massive fight tomorrow, would you pig out like the night before? I don't know.
Well, that might have been what led to Williams' downfall. He had a bit of fun, where it's like
had too much pork.
We'll get into it a bit soon here. That's a pretty woman in the blue dress. John was talking to.
Bloke's hoovering up the rice there.
I get like this part here. I'm thinking, what is that? It's lobsters. Jeez.
Robert Klaus's direction is sometimes they're shooting on a anamorphic lens, and it's a lot of like extreme kind of close-ups and everything. I think maybe it's the set not being as big as they want, and have to sort of cover it. With a lot of close-ups to hide things.
It's funny because the way things were done in Hong Kong is a bit weird in production, where a lot of the sets were demolished and reused like the next day. Okay, we've done with that. Next set, break it, build it. and a lot of them was in closed space. So that kind of probably leads to what you're saying, where a lot of close-ups, and there was just a big barrier of issues there. Where I think Fred Weintraub mentioned in a documentary, I think Curse of the Dragon, where they'd rent a couch for like a scene like one of these, and then they have to redo it the next day, and they said, "Oh, we don't have it anymore. We sold that couch." Like in the storage, in the production storage of the film, they say, "Oh yeah, we sold that couch. You can have another one." And so no, we got it. It's continuity. We got to have the same couch.
Because they said, because there's a different sort of opinion of Bruce on the day, like early shooting was what obviously we'll see soon when he's in his apartment, his room, and the ladies come in and he's supposed to be really nervous. That was the American producers were saying he was very nervous on the day. He was late to the shoot, but then the Chinese who were working on it had a completely different story to everything.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you don't know who to believe, really. There hasn't really. It'd be good to have this kind of a big making of kind of book on Enter the Dragon. That gives a perspective on both sides to sort of create this sort of, something that's kind of not conflicting, but sort of difference of opinions that sort of gives you a clear idea of what was going down.
Well, Fred had said at one stage that Bruce didn't show up at all. Not that he was late. He didn't show up at all for the first the first week or two. He didn't show up at all, and they were shooting everything but him because he got so nervous. This was his big break, and it was Bruce's wife Linda that was the real rock for him at that stage. Yeah, that she was like saying to Fred, because Fred was like, are we making a film or not? And Linda was like, don't worry, he'll be there. He'll be there. And I can see why it's nervous, because when you get what you want, it's the whole idea. This is what Bruce had been leading up to for many years. When you finally get what you want, you're scared, like, what, do I want this? You get that nervousness. And the interesting thing about it is, Way of the Dragon, that Bruce was doing roughly about the same time he found out that people were interested in Hollywood in him. Way of the Dragon was originally called Enter the Dragon. Now, there's an interview with Alex Ben Block, where Bruce is like saying, I'm on the set with Chuck Norris now on the set of Enter the Dragon. And Alex Ben Block was a writer for, I think, Esquire magazine, something like that. And he contacted him, says, you're getting real popular in America. And I think what happened, based on that conversation, Bruce might have reserved the name Enter the Dragon for this movie, and then delete it for that one. Change that to Way of the Dragon.
Right. Yeah, because I know the American producers didn't particularly like Enter the Dragon as a title. But that's also saying now it's like it's silly to think, it was
what
a
else
bad
could it
name
be
from the beginning. It was you don't know what it's going to become. But
I think it was going to be Blood and Steel. I think it was going to be or Blood and Bone.
That'd be a weird one.
Yeah, Blood and Bone. It's just so weird because I've seen a drawing of Bruce Lee, like it's got his hands in frame and his face behind his hands. And it's got Blood and Steel, something like that. Yeah, we got.
You have our gratitude.
I'm going back to Fistful of Yen, where he's got the vibrator in his hand, and he's just had made love to the woman. She says, "Oh, you have our gratitude." And again, the answering machine as well.
The answering machine's the best, though, isn't it?
Leave your message after the beep. You have our gratitude. And they got the traditional Asian gong, like gong. If anyone hasn't watched it, please watch it. It's just so funny, but it will ruin your experience for this film. I'll be honest. It'll just you can't think of one without the other.
When it's got the alarm goes off, just some guy with his megaphone going.
What about the guy in his room that's bugged, and they're going to each bug room, and you see one little Asian old man with a boom mic in the corner, and it's like they're trying to.
I love this moment here because Jim Kelly, because he's got the rule is supposed to pick one lady maybe, but he just goes, I love you, and
what
you.
Rule? Bugger the rules. I'm here. They brought.
Yeah.
I didn't think about this till a few years ago. If you look at their rooms, it's catered to each individual, which is a bit amazing if you think about it.
It is a bit, yes.
Because
right.
They could have brought a poster. Jim Kelly Williams would not have brought posters and whatever. They say, here's your room, sir. And it's decked out to be as reflective of appealing to this individual. Obviously African-American of that time. Same with Bruce. Same with John Saxon's character. It's like, wow, this is something... They never delve into the movie, but they show that one clip in Tower of Death where Bruce Lee walks into the room and he sees it's catered to him and it has a typewriter and one of his actual books. Yeah. So it says this is for you. And he's kind of semi-impressed where it's like, wow, they got a book. This room is catered to me as the individual. So they've done their research. They know who they've invited.
It's just the horrendous 70s fashion, isn't it? I hate that wallpaper. You know, you went down like relatives and they hadn't changed their house for years, and it's just like, ooh, ghastly 70s crap.
Oh, I still remember some relatives who had the plastic on the couches back then. That's the 80s.
Yeah.
That's more 80s than 70s, I think. But yeah, I still remember
dust on their furniture.
Oh, you can just hear the crack and there's the typewriter there, Bruce. There's a typewriter. There's that. So apparently this was supposed to be his first scene. Now, if you do look at his lip, it is twitching. So I'm not sure who to believe. I think I might believe that this was his first scene, where he says, before he says the owner of this star, look at his lips, and he's got like a bit of a twitch. So he's fine, but just before he says the line, the owner of the start, you'll see his lips move. So just... yeah, it's got a bit of a twitch there, but it's neither here nor there. Anna Capri. She plays Tanya, if I think. And the only thing, you only hear that name in the trailer. You never see it at all in the movie. You never hear it at all in the movie. Yeah.
So they fed you up. They're going to give you some women, make your legs all wobbly for the fight, you know.
He's smart, because I think he's out of all of them. Like he's like in Bruce's Why You're So Apprehensive. He knows that he can smell a setup a mile away. That's the thing, where he knows something's not right. Like he's intrigued by it.
Things seem all too good. It's like,
well, no, that's usually the
you've
case.
been
If
fattened
something
up for
seems
the
that
kill.
good, yeah. If something seems that good, you know it's whatever. But again, I don't want to say exactly what he is whipped of, but he's got a specific weakness to this woman. So yeah, so that's one thing that kind of led into like the appeal, and she likes him obviously, so it works both ways. But he's got that suave, you know.
That's weird that Bruce gets a bird in a cage, you know.
Yeah, like I said, it's appealing to each individual. Look at John Saxon's silked up bed sheets. Is, you know, the whole dark sort of you know, he's a player. So
there's a weird edit here, isn't it? When they go to talk, she goes shush, and then the photography changes. It's like nighttime now. It feels like maybe it already was nighttime, but it's just a weird. It feels like there's a scene missing there.
Yeah, definitely. And there are outtakes of that scene where you can see online where they are sitting down with each other and they're talking, and there is like, I don't know, it's a bit weird. Maybe I was going to say maybe the audio was bad, but everything's dubbed, so it doesn't matter. Everything's
It sounds like a very abrupt edit in the audio, isn't there?
Yeah,
you know, going from her saying shush, then suddenly
let's be quiet,
down.
and it's a very odd one at that.
I love this bit here, Bruce, just kind of warming up. It's great.
Amazing physique, just everything about it, like that body. Like, personally, I think maybe he was a bit too lean in this film. I think his best appearance was in Way of the Dragon, where he was at his peak.
I like that look. Like his hair's good in that Way of the Dragon as well.
Yeah, here he's got a bit of a mullet going on, which I thought, ooh, it kind of...
well, it's 70s hair. It's just a big bowl of hair, you know?
Oh, yeah, but you can tell like it's a bit longer at the back, just a little bit. Nothing special, but like if you see it in certain shots where it's shorter, it looks more appealing to the way looking...
Well, he's, you know, it's Bruce is always good with his fashion, you know, being
he was a trendsetter.
Shades. Oh, yeah. He's a James Dean, isn't he, of that?
I love this. Like, get your... And this guy is shitting himself. I mean, how wouldn't you? Like, this guy's about to kick the shit out of him. And there's a cool scene if you watch at the end. Bruce does kick the shit out of this guy. There's one shot where he gives him one side kick and knocks him out. Going back to Bruce's fashion, yeah, it's ironic because in these films he's very traditional Chinese garb, but Bruce was a trendsetter when it came to fashion. He was very much of that flower power, not too much of a hippie to that degree, but he was part of that era. And he embraced it, and a lot of the clothes, and he makes it look good. I mean, he's got the physique.
Oh yeah, he's got the physique for it, isn't he? Yeah, wearing big flares and those, you know, big shirts, massive collars.
He was. There's a shirt that him and his wife shared. It was a woman's shirt, and he wore it too. And I can't remember which one it is. Like I know which one it is if I see it. I just can't remember to explain. But yeah, his wife Linda had a shirt, and I found out years later because wait a sec, that's the same shirt. And his wife, like in an interview, said he used to wear my shirts. So he was comfortable with fashion, which is much different from the traditional Chinese martial arts type persona we see in film. Got the music going.
Good old Bolo.
Go! Had a different name. They changed it to Bolo Young specifically from the success of this film. Then it worked for him.
Yeah, he sort of lived off. It's one of those kind of. There's some actors like that, isn't it? They sort of change their name because based on a popular character, based on their, you know, the performance they'd done and the character they're associated with, and you know, I obviously recognised him from as a kid. I think I'd seen Double Impact first, then Into Dragon. So I was like, oh, that's the guy from, you know, and he's still massive in, you know, Double Impact, and you know, he's got massive pecs. Just always been bench pressing all his life.
Yeah. The thing about he's the villain in Bloodsport, but he's got some nice moments where he's doing his pecs, where he's cleaning out his nose.
Yeah, just doing the Bruce thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to hate him. He's too charming. He's too appealing. Where you don't want to hate him, but he is the villain.
Jim Kelly is fast in this.
Oh, he's in great shape too. Like, it's amazing. I think the original cast for who was originally going to play Williams was Rockney Tarkington.
Right.
He was in a movie, I think, Black Samson at the time, and he was originally going to play Williams, and he had a dispute with the production, and he says, oh, this and that, probably for money, which is usually the case, and they fired him, and they got Jim Kelly in the last spot at the last moment.
John Saxon, he's quite young in this movie. He's going grey quickly.
That's the thing. That top part that you see that's going grey is his hairpiece, because he was wearing a hairpiece at that stage.
He was wearing a hairpiece. Oh right, I thought later on he sort of lost his hair.
As vain as he is to wear a hairpiece, look, he's an actor. It helps a lot. He's actually said, look, I'll put a bit of grey in it to make it look natural. I'm thinking, wow, that's I didn't know that, but there are behind the scenes where he's got like the James Bond sort of the Sean Connery thing, where come Thunderball, like Sean Connery was wearing a hairpiece. But I mean, yeah, like you said, that's a hairpiece there, because obviously hair doesn't part.
The guy fighting John Saxon, he's another guy was he in Way of the Dragon?
Tony Lew. Now, Tony Lew is actually one main guys that have been in nearly all of Bruce Lee's films.
Oh, yeah. I thought his face was recognisable.
He was the son of the boss in The Big Boss. He was one of the actors in Fist of Fury. He was in Way of the Dragon, and he was in this. Now, except for Game of Death, he's probably the only main actor that's been in like 4 of Bruce Lee's completed films. Like all of Bruce Lee's completed films, he's been in it.
Obviously, this moment here as well is because the Chinese love to gamble, and they'll gamble on anything.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just like, as soon as this fight kicks in, John Saxon's already gambling.
Oh, yeah. Rule of thumb, if anyone's gambling and you like go to a casino, like, always be wary of any kind of Asian person who's dealing the cards. Not that they're cheats, but it's in their blood. Gambling's in their blood. Let's put it that way. They'll even admit it. They love to gamble, and they're a society of gamblers. And it's like, wow, it's just always be wary. Let's just put it that way, because you're dealing with a professional. Just remember that. But I love the setup. He's taking the punishment just to make that bit of extra money. Like, imagine how desperate.
He just punches him straight in the gut, doesn't he?
Yeah. Imagine how desperate you are. This always made me laugh as a kid. The voice goes up. He's like, oh. We all know where he got him. Oh, man. I always felt the first day of fighting was a bit short. Maybe Bruce should have had a fight, in my opinion, because he jumps too quickly to Bob Wall's character. So it's like,
yes, there's only 2 fights on that day, and obviously I presume everyone wearing yellow are participating in this.
Yeah, the participants.
Right? Yeah, so we don't get to see them. I suppose it's sort of like, well, it's not inherently doesn't really affect the story.
Yeah, it's not the main part of the story, which I think, had there had just one scene itself where Bruce was like lightning fast and knocked the guy out with one punch, that probably would have fed into it, where Bruce doesn't have to go through all these details for all that. And that's why it's okay, he's that good. Let's put him up against my bodyguard. Let's put him up against Bob Wall in that respect.
Obviously, with 70s films, they're getting a bit more laxed with nudity.
70s
throwing in boobs.
70s boobies, mate. 70s boobies.
Side boob there.
Shade boob. That's my shade boob. You like that shade boob? That's my shade boob. Peter Griffin there, sorry. Oh, this dude, mate. See, here's the one thing I always kind of I've had opportunities in the past, but I keep forgetting. Like when I've been with one of my girlfriends, whatever. If I go out the room, I always wanted to turn around saying, where they say, "Where you going?" I want to say, "Out in the moonlight, baby." I keep forgetting to do that.
You got to try and spot the human fly as well.
Yeah,
human fly.
Out in the moonlight, baby. No, he's good. I won't lie. Jim Kelly in this, he's cool. He's got that, the blaxploitation type thing where he's got that cool dialogue and the way he pronounces himself. So even because this is early in his career, he really does it well. He's playing.
Oh yeah, he's completely.
He's got charm,
charisma, isn't it, on camera as well? He's, like Bruce's charisma is like off the chart. And,
yeah, like people try to narrow down what it was, and if you look at the Bruceploitation films, they've gotten people which had good physiques.
Yeah,
they've gotten good Chinese actors with good physiques and kind of look like him, do the moves, but they don't have the charisma, and that's the one thing people who know Bruce admit. And it was his charm, it was his presence. He doesn't have to speak. You look at him on stage, just standing there, not even posing. The camera just your eye draws to him.
He's like 100% confident, in himself.
It's just Arnold Schwarzenegger is similar, because Arnold Schwarzenegger as well is a confident man. He's built himself up. He's a bodybuilder, obviously, but he built himself up, and he's got that confidence, and that appeals to a lot of people. That draws people in.
Yeah, certainly.
And that breaks the barriers of language. It breaks the barriers of a lot of things. And here we are back at the.
I love how these bodyguards are just complete, like, just normal dudes, but quite thin and useless, basically. Yeah. If you wear like a beige outfit, you're useless.
Oh yeah. It's again tension of build up, because if you think about it, without the fight scene in the beginning, we're now an hour into the film. If there wasn't the fight scene with Bruce Lee in the beginning, we wouldn't have seen Bruce do any fighting up to this point.
Of course not. No. Yeah, I think that's completely is also a quick afterthought. We need to throw in some more action, because we've not seen Bruce do anything apart from just him warming up in his room.
Yeah, a few movies do that as well, and it's a smart thing. If you like, even Mad Max did something similar, where they had the big action driving scene at the beginning, because there wasn't anything for a number of hours. Yeah. And here it's one of the things where I can see it needed for the American audience and international audience in general.
You paid to see Bruce Lee.
Yeah, because I think the Chinese audience were more used to the slower pace build-up in that respect. So here it was like, yeah. I've been lucky. I've never been mauled by a dog.
Well, bloody hope not.
I mean, I know one or two people that have been attacked by dogs. I've never had that fear in that respect of. I mean, I'm weary of it. I used to go jogging, they'd always growl and bark at me, but I'd never run away from them. I'd always the best thing you usually do is back off slowly, stand your ground, but that's neither here nor there. Look at this.
Just don't look at dogs in the eyes. Don't pay attention to them.
No, the opposite. The opposite. You look them in the eye. You got to show.
I never found that. Also, if you look at them, they always go.
No, they bark. But if you turn your eyes away, if you like, just go in a different direction. But if you turn your eyes away, if you show fear, then it's that whole alpha mentality where it's like they got more confidence to attack. So it's one of those things where you look them in the eye, back away, just show them you're there 100%.
I just love the score here. It was a down.
Yeah, just a nice. Great. I don't know if we mentioned it, but Bruce Lee, when Bruce Lee got aboard of this movie, he found out that Lala Schifrin was doing the score. Bruce was ecstatic because he used to train back in America. He used to train to Mission Impossible, the Mission Impossible theme. So it used to work out to that. And when he heard Lala was going to be in this, he was just stoked. And this is a great score by Lala. I won't lie.
It's one of my favorites. Yeah, it's a great album.
Yeah, it's very 70s, but it's a good 70s. I won't lie. It's a good
70s funk to it. It's good funk.
Yeah,
it's a bit like Bill Conti when people get a bit funny about James Bond scores, and Bill Conti's score to For Your Eyes Only has a bit of that sort of 70s funk to it, and I love it. And actually, the scene earlier on where we saw Bruce at the grave of his sister's grave, standing there, it reminded me of the moment in For Your Eyes Only where it opens with James Bond at the grave.
Yeah, Tracy's grave.
Yeah.
That's why for me, whenever people say James Bond is not a character, he's a code name. No. James Bond is a character. He was married. Let's just leave it at that. Like when people say, "Oh, he can be anything. He can be anyone." It's written as a specific. But anyway, it has got that the standing over the grave thing about going to do something in the name of someone you loved or whatever. The music just kicks in here, and I remember we discussed not long ago. We discussed about how in the 2013 re-release they took out some scores and added some scores in, and one in particular it was very lost and just regretfully not in there. Yeah,
there's I don't know why Warner Brothers have done that. I suppose we'll get to the scene in about 20 minutes at the scene.
Yeah, not too far away.
But they've taken out some of the music, which is most peculiar. Because it's not really their decision to do that, because the director's passed away. They should leave it intact.
I'm thinking it might have something to do with the quality of maybe that particular track was destroyed, because I can't locate it anywhere, so it's not on any CD.
Right. It's not on the album. Sorry,
not that I'm aware of. No, because I had a recent check to see, so it might have been destroyed over the course of time.
Was it in when they remastered it for the 25th, when it gave it like a 5.1 mix? Was the music there for that? Was it just?
When was the 25th? The 25th was what? That was 80, 90.
Maybe in the 90s. 98, wasn't it?
You know, I had the DVD of that one, and I didn't keep much attention to it because it had deleted scenes. It had the nunchuck scenes deleted.
That's when because weird thing, because when this came out in the UK, it was coming, I think, January of '74, and it was passed with a few cuts, but they didn't cut out the nunchucks until a few years later when they reissued it. They took out the nunchucks, and then that became, it was obviously part of the sort of not video nasties, but BBFC had at that point put their foot down on having nunchucks in movies, and the Turtle films came under that later on. But it wasn't till like the late '90s then we finally got to see Bruce with his nunchucks, and I got to see The Way of the Dragon and Fist of Fury were reissued with those nunchuck scenes intact. I was like, oh my god!
Going back to the VHSs I used to rent, they were from a specific company, the 4 Hong Kong-based Bruce Lee movies, Video Star, right? Now, Fist of Fury was uncut, and it was actually a bit more than the American version, and it had the original Hong Kong screams. And that had the nunchuck scene. But The Way of the Dragon, which is odd because it's the same distributor, was so heavily cut. The dual nunchucks were cut. The fight with Chuck Norris was cut in half. I still remember where it was cut. So many cuts to that film where he kicks Bob Wall in the balls, punches Bob Wall in the balls, does this and that. So many scenes were cut where I didn't even know Bruce had 2 nunchucks in that film. And then when I saw it in the 90s, it was reissued. But this is early 90s as well, 93. It had that scene. And again, same with Enter the Dragon, it wasn't edited. For the Australian version, which I thought we would have got the UK version, the Australian VHS of Enter the Dragon was not cut at all. It had the nunchuck scene, it had all that. So I'm like, okay. Those are things that I found out later on in years.
I love how they've put like powder on, like Bolo. So when
works.
The guy kicked him, it was like, whoosh, powder comes off. It's a great effect Hong Kong cinema did, isn't it? They did very early on.
Yeah, like they do it with Jackie Chan. A lot of their movies, they put powder on their shoes, so when they kick someone in the head, it goes flying, and you can see it. Like it does, it adds. You don't subconsciously, you don't think about it. Like it just looks so good to see on screen.
See, some of the shots here are just a bit uninspiring because they've gone for a wide. He goes up to him, and then the camera's behind the dude he's attacking, so you can't actually see what he's doing. So there's a lot of the insert shots are often not covered well. Robert Klaus's sort of direction, it seems a little bit too quick. Like get it done on the day. There's no additional thought there.
Well, there are frustrations that come with a lot of these films that they mentioned. One of the main frustrations is, especially towards the end fight, one day they were shooting with everyone in the white outfits, and they came the next day, and they're like, where are the white outfits? And they said, oh, we sent it to the cleaners because they were dirty. And they said, we've got a schedule, we've got a film, yeah, but they're wet. And they put wet outfits on these actors as well the next day. So there's so many issues with Hong Kong. It wouldn't surprise me where it's like, look, we've only got this equipment for 2 more hours. They're going to sell it to a casino in Macau. Let's just get it done. So, no, I can see as much as there are faults, there's probably a reasoning behind it.
I love this because in this moment here, because it's typical of filmmaking, is when they have a flashback. Bruce has a flashback to a scene, to a moment where he wasn't present.
Yeah, that's the Jaws. That's the Jaws thing to do.
Okay. I love this moment here. It's great.
Yeah, Bruce Lee forgets to look at his opponent when he bows. You mucked up, Bruce.
Yeah.
Nah, but he was looking at his arms and feet. I saw that. I'm sorry, I corrected myself. He was not looking him in the eye, but he was looking at his hands and feet. So no, I'm going to correct that. The famous slide: boards don't hit back. Bolo. He just earned his $1,000 a week.
I just love the speed here of Bruce. Just that quick
Well, it's
jump.
not only that. If you look what he's doing 3 moves. Oh no, 2 moves. He grabs. If you look at it, he grabs. He does it again. He grabs with his left hand, his opponent's hand, pulls it down and flicks. If you look at it normal, if you're looking at it normal, it looks like he's just doing one punch, but it's a technique to it, and it's amazing. Did you see that?
Yeah.
He brings his left hand in first, pulls down the opponent's hand, bang.
Yeah. To make you think he's going to hit with the left,
Well, he removes the opponent's hand, so it's no longer in effect. And here the famous flip, who's not done by Bruce Lee, was done by stuntman Yuen Wah.
That's right.
So amazing. I mean, it wasn't. I don't think it was with wires or anything. It was just done in shot. It's just amazing.
It's a flash kick. There's a bit crack. Yeah. Oh, Bob Wall gets getting his nuts cracked in all his movies, isn't he?
I would have been down like no. No, I'll take the 0.
Didn't Bruce get a bit annoyed with Bob Wall because he cut himself?
Yes.
With the glass?
Yeah, the thing about it with this thing is, again, going back to Hong Kong productions, they say do it for real, which, again, it's why it's so good. They basically had Bob Wall break real glass, where in Hollywood it would have been sugar glass. And Bruce was supposed to come in and kick him, and the glass bottles were supposed to fall out of his hand. And Bob didn't release the glass bottles, and Bruce did a spin, and he jammed his fist right into the broken bottle.
Ooh.
This kick here. So apparently from the impact, one of the stuntmen broke their arms from this impact from stopping Bob. So when they fell back, bang, they broke their arms.
That's the kick he does in The Way of the Dragon, isn't it? Behind
the Way of the
restaurant. Yeah,
that's amazing too. It's a bit more different.
That looks better in that film.
Yeah, but that's with padding, so it's easier to do that kind of move like that, where here you're actually kicking someone in the chest, you don't want to kill them. For me, I always thought the glass was the turning point because his sister killed herself by glass.
Yeah.
So I thought she killed herself by getting stabbed by glass, and he's going to stab me by glass. It's like, that's it. You know, he's ready to walk away. He's like, to hell with it.
Yeah, he was going to let him live.
Yeah, but then again, hearing the glass break, there's things you pick up later on in years. But
I love the music here. That sort of atmospheric kind of
so amazing, isn't it?
Sound. Yeah. And you've got that weird sound effect. It's like I don't know, as it cuts. It's a musical cue.
Yeah, that wow. I can't. You can like here. Yeah,
I love it. I don't know what's. I swear, like anime have used that before, or cartoons.
Many people probably in that. I love Bruce's look. It's in slow motion, but he's looking right at Shikin. He's like, "You ready?" It's so intense. It's like he's in the zone. Let's put it that way. He's in the let's go for it zone where he's looking right at him, and he's like, "You're next." Even this is so subtle. Just how cool. Like I love less is more, and that's the thing. I think that's something that's been missing with a lot of films lately, where everyone like wants to portray in dialogue. The writers, the actors, they want to do it in dialogue. We're just this actor could have said he's dead. No, he just did that simple hand gesture. Whack, you know it.
Yeah.
And look at that cold look in Bruce's eye, just walking away. Everyone's like, they're keeping their distance from him.
Everyone's like, whoa, look at that guy.
Jesus Christ. And you would too if you saw what you just saw. Like, shit, this has gone from a tournament. Like, it's kind of makes you wonder, like, what would have happened had Williams and Roper had met up in the room, because they said, I'll talk about this in my room. Were they going to plan on leaving?
Yeah.
Was this because they just saw the guards get killed, don't forget. And Roper's like, you know, if we want to talk about this thing, I think they probably would have been like, is it worth it? They would have contemplated. Now, would they have left? That's a different story. But I think they would have, like, yeah. Williams here is braggadocio, like, confidence.
Oh, yeah, he's got the great line, bullshit, Mr. Handman. You come right out of a comic book.
You come right out of a comic book.
Love it.
There's a cool scene in Undercover Brother with Eddie Griffin where he's watching this movie and he's like, Jim Kelly. And like, he's modeled the afro over him and he does a few Bruce, because he's a big fan too. But as a kid, I always thought he said Mr. Handman, as in the hand that got blown off. Which I thought, ooh, did he know a secret that pissed off Mr. Han? Or whatever you want to call it, Sharkin. Where that's as a kid, I thought, ooh, he insulted the fact that he lost his hand.
It's weird though, because he gets rumbled. He decks the guys, and then he doesn't realise that Mr. Han has got this kind of, you know, fake hand, which is like putting lead iron or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And defeats him really quickly. But he gets thrown into this kind of like drug den, doesn't he? Everyone's doing opium and stuff. They're always high women. It's like it obviously disorientates him as well, because it's in this completely different world. He gets thrown like room, just like changes everything.
I mentioned this before, but I think every villain should have their own whorehouse drug den room in the side there. It's like,
because the actor playing Mr. Han, he had to phonetically, didn't he, say his words?
Yeah, I was about to mention that. He got dubbed by Key Luke, that did Mr. Poe in the Kung Fu series, and would show up in Gremlins as the old man where they got the Mogwai from.
Yes, yeah, I recognise the voice. Yeah.
And the music goes with each individual. Like with Bruce Lee, you got a more Asian motif. With Jim Kelly, you got the more African American blaxploitation motif. Been practicing, huh? Yeah, this is a great little fight. This one, people always have say like, "Oh, he would have won, but it was the bird's fault." Partially, but I think
bloody pigeons.
Yeah, but I think it's supposed to show that he is outmatched. So it's not so much shown as it is in the script. I think it is where Mr. Han is basically an older version of Bruce Lee, the best I think at what the Shaolin Temple. He's a dark mirror of what Bruce Lee could have become, Lee's character. But the bird,
yeah, because Bruce Lee doesn't. He says later on, he says like you've Was it violated the Shaolin Temple
Yeah,
or something?
yeah,
like
yeah.
that?
This scene here is always so scary. I don't want to say scary, but it's so intimidating where he's standing over him. He says, all right, let him get up. At this stage, he knows he won. Even if he gets up, he knows he's got him. And he's just standing over him, which is scary.
Everyone's just laughing at him as well, you know.
It's just so... The music, again, the music changed from a blaxploitation to a psychedelic... Wow. And these women, which a lot of these women, Asian women, were women of the night. They were pros at one stage, if I'm not mistaken, because a lot of Asian actresses will not do these roles out of disrespect for their family. They will not play the prostitute or the tattooed woman. They're very rare to do that. So most cases in these kind of situations in Hong Kong, same with Big Boss, they usually will get pros for that, professional ladies of the night. Yeah. A lot of the times they won't, because this is very taboo back then. Where a lot of actresses... One thing with Hong Kong actresses, a lot of them, what they do is, their goal is to make a name for themselves and land a rich husband. It sounds weird, but a lot of them did it. That's why a lot of them vanish. Well,
there's a couple, and I've done a few Hong Kong movies, and you sort of, you talk about the cast and stuff, and you sort of go, oh yeah, one of them's, maybe I think 2 or 3 of them I read into had married just like wealthy bankers.
Exactly. Some of the actresses, like in The Big Boss, the Chow Mei, like who was playing Bruce Lee's semi-love interest. I think she did something similar. She met up because of her fame from those 2 movies. She met this wealthy businessman, and she just retired. Nothing else.
We were saying earlier about the sound mixing. Now, this sequence here, they've pulled all the music out, which is...
Imagine if he took that claw, wow. If he used that claw, that would have been so bloody scary. But
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Here is just... they had the nice soundtrack, and it's just so... Especially there's a cue here where he talks about the hand. It's missing.
Yeah.
Because it turned to a dong.
Yeah, it's a wonderful score over here, and they've taken it out. I don't get it.
It's the one score. I have 1 or 2 other issues later, but it's the one score that I think they should have. There's got to be a logical reason. The only logic I can think of, the original master was destroyed. It was damaged.
Do you think maybe they thought, the music was a little bit too much to sort of emphasize this is a bad guy sort of thing, and they felt without music they thought the performances kind of were good enough to sort of push the scene. I don't know. Maybe in a creative choice.
You think they did it like a George Lucas, and they said, we'll do our own...
Well, yeah. Whoever had control over this, it'd be the US division, so maybe not Fred Weintraub may have said...
I never heard anyone complain about the music.
No.
Never once did I hear someone say, the music's just terrible in Enter the Dragon. Everybody pretty much universally agreed that it was that good. They loved it. So I can't see that unless someone, complete idiot, took over the remastering of this film.
Left out the score by mistake. Oh, whoops. It's gone to press. Oh, never mind.
I hate this. I hate this sound and everything about it. I'm doing a Simpsons reference to it.
Because I've got this version on Blu-ray, and luckily I've got the Japanese Laserdisc of Enter Dragon, which before I think Warner's did a 5.1 mix. It's got the original stereo mix, so that music's still intact, so I'm okay. So I'm not missing it.
I like this scene too, as much as it slows down everything. I mean, it's exposition and it's plot. I like this scene mostly for John Saxon's character. He's such what's the word, diplomat you want to call it? Going back to John Saxon and Williams' characters, people have rumored that initially John Saxon's character Roper was supposed to die, as opposed not Williams, and Saxon chucked in a bit of a star fit or whatever you want to call it, like a diva fit. No, I'm not supposed to die. I don't think that was ever the case, because if you look at the 2 characters, especially Williams is a flawed character in that he's got a chip on his shoulder, and it's even referred to when they meet at the boat, where he says, they don't live so big over there. Getters are the same all over the world. They stink. And Roper's like, same old Williams. Williams himself says, yeah. He's got. That's what led to him getting killed. Where if you look at Roper here, he's very diplomatic in that respect. There's probably a better word for it.
He's a business guy, but he's also done a lot of shady stuff, and he's done. So to Han, he would seem like a logical choice to work with for his US sort of market.
And he might consider it, considering the money the debt he's in. And he even says, "Look, I forget what I see very easily." He knows how to talk the talk. He knows to say, he's a bit shocked. Ooh, opium. I know where I'm getting into, but he's like, ooh, but I forget what I see easily. And that's one of the situations where I believe someone like Han might say, you know what, if he does reject the offer, which he probably would have killed him anyway, I could trust this person not to speak, but... a little short reference here to Han's daughters. I always thought that was funny there. But there's a behind-the-scenes footage where you can see Bruce teaching one of the ladies how to do a flip.
That's right.
How to do the arm. And Bruce is in his garb, so he's not like in the movie outfit. He's just everyday
his
clothes.
Wacky outfit. It's like a jacket with loads of is it flowers on it or something? I can't remember.
I had no idea what they were doing here. I thought as a kid they were doing marmalade or something. I think
making a big stew, aren't they? Making a big stew. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. There's sweet and sour sauce there. It's great. It's all right. And then you see William's kind of strung up, and you were saying to me because he gets dropped into acid.
Yeah.
And I thought to me, it doesn't like water. So there was. Yeah. I don't think. Did it have any steam coming off it? I can't remember.
I think what the basic, because even as a kid, I knew that was acid. So it never occurred to me like the thought occurred was it water, but it was more like the acid. But what I think in the Hong Kong version, because Hong Kong's redubbed it for their, for Cantonese or whatever it is, they added the fizzing sound of like you'd get from that acid or whatever you'd get from that sound. So I think that's something that might have benefited in this movie.
My theory as a kid was that Williams wasn't dead; he was just like heavily stunned, and then they just drop him into water to drown him.
That's even more messed up. If that's the case, that's even more messed up because I thought he was dead. Because if you got like a big a metal.
He's dead.
You think he'd be
dead. But as a kid, you're like, oh, he can't be dead.
He's like, he's floating around. They're gonna pick him up later. Like, jeez. But the physics, just the thought of him being alive and chained up again. That might not have been a good. That might have been a harsh scene, even in the 70s, for African Americans to see one of their own covered in chains the way he was.
Good point,
and dropped. That was something that I even thought about it.
It's something you'd be concerned about with the censors and stuff, people's reaction. I think with probably test screenings, they probably had,
That might have been cut out. They might have gone back to say, look, we don't appreciate him covered in chains that way. Which is logical for the context of the scene. If they're dropping him somewhere, he doesn't want to float up. The best thing to do. And this, boom. This was always shocking. On the VHS, it was a bad copy because it was so muffled. I just remember as a kid, the VHS, when it showed a close-up of his face. Now, I don't know if they did that as a transfer on purpose to lessen the R rating.
Or you just made down to sort of the low res of VHS in general.
Yeah.
Maybe. And also you'd be watching a pan and scan as well, so it just looked like shit anyway.
Yeah. He sells it. He was like his best friend. And here's the thing. As friendly as someone's are, is people say, look, how friendly were they because they hadn't been together for so many years. They hadn't been seeing each other for 6 years. But as an ex-military person myself, I can tell you gain certain bonds with people in the military because they were in Vietnam together. They were Vietnam buddies, where it does transcend time, where if you see them again, you there's a big, strong bond because you go through something very primal, if you want to say it, within two people where you get a strong bond.
Oh, sure.
So, and I think Roper here sells it. When he goes in the acid, he's like, and again, he's underrated. Unfortunately, John Saxon, in my opinion, is someone who should have done a lot more films. Because he is good.
Oh, he is fantastic in this movie.
In this movie, he's good, but it's funny because people call him the B actor, the B. I'm thinking, and I seen him in Beverly Hills Cop 3. He pops up in that. He's not that good in that one.
Number 3. Oh, Bruce going in for the second attempt to break in, which is we're gonna get to one of my favourite parts of the movie. I always rewatched it over and over again, just to.
Yeah, the fight scene.
That bit when he tries to get into the elevator doesn't come, so he just turns around and goes bah bah bah, takes out all these guys.
I think even his son Brandon says out of all the fight scenes, that particular shot is his favourite.
Oh yeah, just the speed of it, and also the way they cover it. You don't really show you all because all the extras are often they always shoot it in a way where you see all the extras come like in Fist of Fury. You see them all charge at him, but in this it's completely different where they just kind of come into frame and get punched out.
I'm so glad the snake wrapped its thing around itself. Why? Because up to that point I thought it was fake, and when it wrapped, I'm like, ooh, that's real.
Real, yeah. And
that's so good. It's like an animal did something there where instead of being flipped, it wrapped around and think, oh shit, that's real. That's so scary.
There's other mad theories as well when Bruce Lee had passed away, like, oh, he got bitten by the snake, the poison got into him and killed him. It's like these mad theories.
Well, it's the one theory that I think Bay Logan mentioned that didn't really pop around much, which is kind of surprised. Like, not many people said, oh, the snake was a delayed response, because they didn't defang the snake, they devenomed it, but it did eventually bite him in 1 or 2 scenes. I showed this to a relative of mine back when I went to Australia back like 20 years ago, and this was an older relative. He was like in his mid to late 30s at that stage, and he'd never seen Bruce Lee at all. He never grew up like with we did. Like he married a cousin of ours, and our cousin and us, we grew up on this, and and I showed it to him because I bought a copy when I went to Australia to watch. I bought it from there because it was uncensored in Australia, and when he saw it, first of all, he's looking at the snake, saying, "Oh, that snake's got to be fake," you know. And he's thinking about it. Then he says, "Oh no, it's a real snake." And then he watched it. He was so into the film, he called friends up from work on the neighborhood the next day. He says, "Come watch this film." And this is just something like people of all ages can watch it. And there are moments where you think, "Oh, that's got to be fake," because they're so used to it now. Where in Hollywood things are done for the fake. It's where here in this era in Hong Kong, yeah, get a real cobra. I'm thinking, no way, man. I don't know how much you could pay me to get near a snake. I'm just terrified of them.
I just don't like spiders. So that's my weakness.
I don't mind spiders. I even pick them up. I pick up spiders as long as I know they're not venomous. But I usually pick them up with a paper to get them out of the house so I don't step on them. I don't.
Nah, mate, get the Hoover.
Nah, spiders kill flies. Spiders are good, mate. They do more good. Snakes, different story. Snakes, they say, eat mouses, so I guess everything's got its value. This scene here, like, look at Bruce's face. This is, I think, where he got bitten in other takes.
Yeah, he's about to slap it. He's like, "Ooh."
Yeah. Again, here I thought, oh, it's got to be fake, because I've never handled a snake, but actually you see it, it's real. But look at his face. He doesn't like what he's doing. I wouldn't either. Not what I mean, like, not that he's slapping it. He doesn't like handling a snake, and he swears it under his breath. You know? Yeah, you motherfucker. Look how the one guy dives out of the bloody thing, and that's concrete.
He kind of like somersaults out, doesn't he, or something, you know?
Head first.
Yeah.
But that's me. That's how desperate I'd be to get away from a snake.
And that's a great moment there with Bruce just kind of looking a bit bored, you know. He's done that sort of look in other movies. Bruce had it. See, that's the thing. When they got the Bruce Lee look-alike, a lot of the things they missed. They didn't have any charisma, no charm whatsoever. Bruce knew camera. Bruce knew how to play with the camera. This going back from his child acting. Oh, yeah. And his father, who was in a Cantonese opera. That's right.
I don't think this would play very well now, seeing the snake actually get stepped on.
It's calling the British to come save the day.
Pan and scan, that scene was actually pretty bad. Yeah. Pan and scan, that scene was actually, couldn't see the snake's head rail up. I just remembered that now from a kid. In the VHS pan and scan, you only saw the close-up of the foot. You couldn't see the head pop up.
I love that kick.
Yeah, the shirt had to get ripped. Which is funny because after he gets captured, they let him change, and he changes into he doesn't put on clothes. He just puts on new pants.
He does, doesn't he? He's got he's got outfit for everything, hasn't he?
But the thing is, they caught him in this outfit. They let him go change, but he's like, I don't need a shirt. I'm going to be shirtless. You think they'd let, not just say, oh, okay, you got pants, that's enough. This is amazing, just slow motion here, and just Bruce Lee covered in sweat here. And I think we talked about it not just recently, that it's kind of recently been discovered that one of the things that Bruce Lee did, I'm not going to say this is fact because I don't know it's true or not, but it's been popping around here and there, that Bruce Lee removed the sweat glands from under his arms. Yeah,
it's a theory played out by Matthew Polly, who wrote a book on Bruce Lee recently, and he sort of theorized that Bruce had what caused his death was heat stroke due to removing his sweat glands, and it was the hottest day of the year when he died in Hong Kong. So yeah, that was it adds to the puzzle, you know.
It's not a bad theory because the thing about it, Bruce Lee had passed out once before doing the dubbing for Enter the Dragon, and it was that hot season. There's Jackie Chan quickly just to mention it because everyone does it.
Oh, of course. Is the neck break? But you can hear in the sound mix when he breaks it. I always felt like you can hear like the crew in the background say a word.
I don't know. I've got to check that. I've never noticed.
Give it a listen again. You might be able to hear it.
Yeah, but going back, Bruce did pass out in the audio booth because there's no air cons in the audio booth to do the dubbing, so that makes sense. And he passed out in the. So that does go back to that. Look at this. What he does, 3 movements. He doesn't just hit. It's just so amazing. He does 1, 2, 3. So he does 2 hand movements before he strikes. He parries, and strikes.
I just love all of this ADR dubbing by Bruce here is incredible. I love the noises he makes. No one else can do that noise. I've never seen any martial artists, because if they do it, it's like, oh, you're copying Bruce. Yeah. But it's just that sound of raw power coming out of his body.
Now, again, I'm not going to feed into this rumor because if it's true, I don't want to know, where people said that wasn't Bruce, that was someone else. And I doubt it because I can hear other dubbings of like Big Boss, someone else was doing the screaming, where after Fist of Fury, it sounds specifically like Bruce was doing his own screaming.
Well, I was always confused really with the Cantonese dub of like those kind of his Hong Kong movies. It was never Bruce, was it? It was always someone else doing the voice.
Yeah, it was. That's odd. Yeah, because Bruce. But no, here's the thing. In Way of the Dragon, Bruce dubs and Fist of Fury. He dubs some of the English voices.
Yeah, but he doesn't dub himself because
he doesn't dub himself.
The best bit in The Way of the Dragon of the dubbing is when they dub the cat. They don't have a cat meow. They have a person do an impression of a cat. It's so fucking funny.
That scene used to freak out my brother where the prison men grabbed that guard and he was like, wow, they're just going to rip him apart. I can't imagine
they're all suffering from tiredness. They've all got major eye bags, haven't they? I haven't slept for 20 years.
Oh, again, going back to Fistful of Yen. It was like, just lost drunken men who no longer care where they find themselves. I'm not drunk, neither am I. Take him out of the cage and give him a drink.
Yeah, I love that bit. Yeah. See, they cut. Obviously, the famous scene they cut. I mean, it's just a very short moment, really, with him. Yeah,
I wish they had more nunchucks.
The Way of the Dragon, it's full on. Two of them.
Fist of Fury is the best nunchucks, in my opinion, better than Way of the Dragon.
Way of the Dragon were more realistic. He's taken on more people, isn't he, with them?
But Way of the Dragon were realistic nunchucks, where they're full on wood. Where Fist of Fury were rubber. They were rubber mold, and they're still on display. They were on display at I think, in Hong Kong. You can see them at like certain museums or exhibitions. And when I stopped at Hong Kong, I just missed out the Bruce Lee exhibition. This was in 2013.
Oh, right. You just missed out on that, yeah.
I just missed out by a couple of days.
So they're wood in Enter the Dragon, are they? They look wood.
In Way of the Dragon, they're wood. Right. I mean, different for close-ups, they've got different things. Yeah. But if you look at them, they don't look straight wood.
Using them, if you bang your elbow, God, it really hurts. That's
when the elbow. I've hit myself in the head with them, like doing it, bang, just so hard. The doctor thought I might have brain damage. I like that story. No, but I mean, I don't want to. Yeah, like a lot of kids, I don't want to say but I was good at it. I was decent at nunchucks because I just practice. Yeah. I just remember nothing else to do.
But it's best to practice with rubber ones first, because I made a mistake getting wooden ones. Because I got it from was it Kung Fu magazine or Impact magazine? They had in the back in the 90s. You could buy nunchucks despite them being kind of illegal to a certain degree, I think.
Yeah, but we did something worse. As in Australia, we did something much worse. We got 2 metal pipes and a chain. And we'd hammer where the chain and the pipes would meet, so it'd be a flat, sharp end. And then we'd get duct tape and wrap it all, the black wire tape, and wrap it all the way around. Now, I don't know. That's just a history lesson. I'm not encouraging people to make weapons.
I love the moment there where the British diplomat gets the message really late. Just like comes in the morning with his tea. When did this come in?
Yeah.
It's like,
when did this come in? And it's telling the
wake him up. It's like
it's not waking him up. He's sleeping with a woman. I didn't pick that up as a kid. Yeah. I don't care who he's with, because the whole because I can think the conversation. He's in bed. We'll wake him up. He's with someone. I don't care if he's not alone. He's with a woman. Damn it! I don't care who he's with. That's what. So probably that's what I think was going on. Like his colonel was having an affair. This is so interesting. Again, a musical cue was cut out where Roper was walking out to do the tournament take place. Bolo.
It's like Bruce Lee is shredded, and then you got Bolo just like buff, Yeah,
Bruce Lee's lean. Like he lost a lot of weight for this film. That's the problem. He was losing weight at this stage. So this could go back to the whole Swickland thing. But he was like losing weight.
It wasn't that he took a lot. He sort of not take a lot of, but he took cannabis as a way to sort of slow himself down, because he was just like couldn't sleep.
Yeah, because Bob Wall had mentioned, he was in a conversation with Bruce that to unwind, Bob used to drink wine, and Bruce did not drink alcohol at all. He he could never really drink, which kind of plays into the movie he did. And he said the best way he unwinds is hash cookies.
Yeah,
he used to take hash cookies, and it's not. Back then, it's not as shocking as it may sound. I mean, to kids, it probably would have sounded shocking to me.
Hash and stuff wouldn't have been as strong as it is nowadays.
No. But it's the more pure stuff you'd imagine back then, less chemicals and such. So it's more. I don't know enough about hash, what you mix it with, whatever. But the thing about it wasn't uncommon, because even back then, like his father was used to eat opium or smoke opium. I don't know how it goes. You smoke opium, okay. His father was into that. And his father, again, he was part of that wealth. His father was actually quite wealthy. Bruce came from a wealthy family.
Oh, yeah.
Well-to-do. And he was into that sort of stuff. And one of the issues with Bruce, I don't know, not issues with Bruce directly, but because of an issue with Bruce in the sense that he wasn't pure-blooded Chinese. His mother, Grace, was half German.
That's right.
Now, and one of the issues there is that because Bruce was not full-blooded, he had a lot of doors closed to him. Had his father not been wealthy and celebrity in that sense, a lot of doors would have been closed to him. To some degree,
It plays into like Bruce getting into trouble when he was younger, and he sort of, because of his dad's.
Bruce was not officially allowed to train with Yip Man in Wing Chun. Yip Man was not officially allowed to be his master. One of Yip Man's major students was registered as having Bruce Lee as his student.
Right.
But Bruce still trained under Yip Man, so he still got that. But that mainly fell to that. So when Bruce came to the States, and he opened up his own dojo and started training non-whites, non-Asians, he was training whites and African Americans. The Asian community were not upset so much that he was training non-Asians, because they all knew, like, we're limited. If you're going to make money, you've got to make it somehow. But because other Asians at the stage were teaching Caucasians and African Americans, they didn't like Bruce because of that reason. Whereas, like, who are you? We let you train only because your father was wealthy type thing. Who are you to now share that sort of thing? Who are you to teach these people? Quickly, before we forget, sound missing here.
Yeah, because it was supposed to, isn't it, in the script, that he kills him with like a judo chop, the classic Austin Powers gag, but he chops him to the throat, because it always cut to a reaction, didn't it?
And it kind of gives the indication that he died from a kick to the balls, which doesn't make sense. But in the VHS copy, there's a sound effect when it cuts to Shakin, Mr. Han, where you hear a bang, a punch sound effect.
I like watching the extras in the background. Some of them are giggling.
Some of them are terrible.
Yeah. Is it because Bruce is making noises? That's quite funny.
This is funny, this bit. Eddie Griffin, the black comedian we're talking about, does this mad bit where he's talking about, there's a scene, I'm watching Enter the Dragon or Fist of Fury, where the master's like, Chi-chang, 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 Wang! And they all go in, they get their ass kicked, and that's, then he calls the second wave, Chang Wang, Chi-chang, wah, wah! And Eddie's thinking, if I was there, hold the fuck up. Them was your black belts. My shit is orange. You the teacher, teach. If you whoop his ass, I'll keep taking your class. If not, I'm going to train with that motherfucker. It's just amazing, but Eddie Griffin's just a big fan, and that's one of his best jokes, because he just narrows it down. You know he's a fan. He's just doing the whole thing. And he's right. And you've got to imagine, if you just seen all these black belts get the shit kicked out by one guy, and you're a white belt, what the fuck are you going to do?
Yeah, you're a white belt. You're useless.
It's like, fuck that shit. And this is good.
I'm out here.
If you didn't see, like, you saw Bruce running around in the background, and he's about to kick the guy that told him to wear the shirt. Not him. Wear the uniform. He's about to kick him now. You quickly watch. Bang.
Oh, yeah. Isn't it funny, if you look in the background, you can kind of see Bruce giving someone direction, I think.
Yes. In the first shot, we see all the other guys come in. Shikin is sitting on this chair, leaning on his chair, and Bruce is, like, running around, because Bruce Lee was the choreographer of this one.
That's right.
So he brought so much into it, but he was the choreographer for this.
There's way too many tight close-ups here, isn't it? Some of it, so I can't see.
It's not only that. The tight close-up you see are actually they use it again later on in wide angles. So not only are they tight, they're used shots. They're like they use the same shot twice from different angles. That it works, but it's just you've seen it many times.
If you're cutting quite quickly, you can get away with it very easily.
So people have argued, who are these people that were in the black uniforms and they can fight so well, and they were locked up? I always assumed they were people that Han invited to the tournament. They either found out too much, or he asked to be part of his crew, and they said no, and he just locked them up, not knowing what to do.
That's a lot of people he's locked up.
Yeah, it only works for this scene where they're fighting, because it doesn't make sense. What are you going to do with 40 people locked in a shell? You can't let them go. So the logical next move, you think, probably kill them. So probably, that's even scarier now that I think about it. Imagine if that acid dip was there. It's like, are you going to join me? You're going to go on the acid. And all those people watch their friends get dumped in that acid.
Yeah.
Because why else would he have that if not to dispose of bodies? Look at Bruce here.
True. Look at that look.
Look at Bruce.
The movie doesn't deploy that sort of like POV sort of camera angles, like, because in like Mortal Kombat years later, they put like a cabinet thing around the camera which the actor could punch, so you can get that effect. But obviously it's literally just handheld, and they're sort of standing at a right distance where they don't actually hit the lens. It works. I like it.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Like, even again, you're going back. This is 1973. This is very revolutionary, because the funny thing is, Hollywood didn't make a film like this for another at least 10, 15 years.
No.
They tried. It never worked. I mean, they got Robert Klaus to come back to do the reshoots of Game of Death, and his stuff is terrible.
Well, that was Golden Harvest sort of rehiring him. I don't think it was... Well, it was obviously not Warner Brothers' thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think maybe because Bruce had gone, there was maybe this is kind of they didn't know what to do, because other actors in Hong Kong didn't have the awareness of Bruce and worldwide recognition. So it took, it took Jackie Chan years to break that.
It took Jackie Chan years, and they tried to bill him. Yeah, they got him in the sequel to Fist of Fury and the new Fist of Fury. And with the Game of Death, there's a bit of a more different story there, where the Japanese had already invested money before Bruce died, and Golden Harvest were under contract to provide something because Bruce Lee became big in Japan. And this is what happened.
I do love this bit in a minute because he kicks a dummy, doesn't he? Of hard. It's because it just goes flying off camera. I love it. It's so
I gotta
funny.
wonder, did they know with all these knife cuts? Did they know how iconic he was gonna be? Because Bruce had to know. Because you look at him, the cut chest, the cut everything. I'll tell two stories here in a second. One is, okay, because we're talking about here, because he's going to get the big kick in the head, but when he jumps and gets cut, Bruce Lee tasting the blood was something that a student of his told him years ago in the States. One of his American students said he was in a bar fight and someone cut him with he was drunk, and someone cut him with a beer bottle, and because he was so drunk, he tasted his own blood, and it freaked the other guy out, and Bruce loved that story. And when he saw the movies, he's like, oh my God, like, that's my master Bruce. He took my idea. Yay! He was happy but Bruce took that from his mate, apparently. According to my godfather, now I don't know if this is true or not, but he keeps laughing. I think, okay, I was so young, I was 3 years old, when I saw Bruce Lee get cut in his movies, I'd get so upset, I'd eject the VHS and go and put it in the freezer. That's his story. I can think, what? He says, yeah, he laughs at it. He says, you were so upset that your hero got cut that you didn't know what to do. You eject the videotape and you'd run and put it in the fridge. And I'm thinking, what kind of idiot does that? And then I think, oh, me. It makes sense.
It's the kick here. I love it.
This kick, the dummy. I saw it in the cinema. People still laugh. Not that it's stupid, it's but amazing. Anybody who gets kicked with that, they're dead.
Yeah. I love this.
Look at this
headlock.
I love this bit. Superfluous, but he just does it. He's a bugger. Pah! And this pose here. How did he know? How did he know? I'm going to pose for the camera.
I mean, it's very difficult to replicate that pose and make it look good. Brad Pitt does it quite well in Fight Club.
Brad Pitt does it good. There's another bloke in, what movie is it? I think it's Gamer. The bloke from Dexter. He was ripped and he got cut. And he actually did that. He was shirtless, cut like Bruce Lee, and he actually started posing like Bruce Lee. So it's a direct rip-off, obviously.
It's also another 70s thing. I think it happens in the Bond films. We'll have an action scene with no music, and they choose not to have music in some of these moments. So it's very it's kind of littered in little moments. But obviously, as soon as he opens the door, Lalo Schifrin kind of throws in music.
I think the door opens the wrong way. Continuity error, I think.
Does it?
In a second. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, but I think the way it opens from right to left. Where he goes in, it's left to right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a difficult thing to do, isn't it? Because you've got to hide the camera and not get the camera crew in reflection,
John Wick 2 did it recently.
Yes.
I knew, as soon as I saw that moment where he goes in the Hall of Mirrors, I said, that's Enter the Dragon. And they did it perfectly because they added clothes and some things to hide camera movements because they also had like a mirror box in the middle.
I remember when they did Dragon the Bruce Lee story with Jason Scott Lee in '93, and they recreate this kind of Hall of Mirrors. And they didn't do a very good job of it. They obviously had the mirrors.
No, they didn't.
They barely had any set dressing. It was just mirrors. It was like, where's all the the clothes? And it's like obviously clearly a room that's used.
There was a lot of half measures done in that film when they did recreate it. There's a bit of issues with that. But the John Wick thing was amazing because nowhere you could see clear as day. They just removed it. Obviously, they removed it digitally. They couldn't do that back then. But here's just hats off to whoever. Like a lot of people took credit for it. So if it was Robert Klaus, because I think a lot of signs pointing to it was Robert Klaus' idea. Hats off. This is amazing.
Oh yeah.
Because apparently Bruce didn't like the idea. He's like, this is going to look silly.
Because obviously, I presume it's like a camera hidden inside like a box, mirrored box.
A four-mirrored box, a four-cornered box type thing, or three-mirrored walled box, so it doesn't reflect. But that's why you've added extra things, so not to show. The music, everything. Dun, dun.
Obviously, there's another little bit, isn't it? They throw in here where he hears the voice of his master, or he's kind of maybe sensei, I don't know. But it's
I think Sifu, you'd call it.
He gives him like a little bit of a tip, doesn't he? Like
that original tip about illusions and so forth.
He just remembers. That wasn't in the original cut, was it? So there's two scenes they've kind of put back in.
I just saw someone's face. I saw a cameraman's face.
Did you?
Yeah, he's like down the hall from Bruce Lee. But you can't see it now. But again, I know like, anyone who picks this film apart, you'll definitely see one spot here or there.
Yeah. The goofs on IMDb.
Yeah. But just looking at him, like the cut body, like in more ways than one. But it was just so iconic. I mean, did they know on the set? Did they know this would be so iconic? The image of Bruce Lee cut up
that
like
image
the way he
there,
is.
where Bruce is.
That is very famous. Yeah, that's
along,
very good.
Absolutely. I think it's even used as the sort of the cover for the later versions of Enter the Dragon.
People don't want to give Bruce Lee his credit. They say, "Oh, how good of an actor was he? You know, he wasn't good at dialogue." People say, "I don't think that. I think he's very good at dialogue, but it's his charisma and mannerism when he walks in front of the camera. He's so good.
How he poses.
He's just so convincing. How he poses.
Yeah.
You know, he's just amazing." Now, this was the scene we were talking about that was re-entered.
It's like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Pre-Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He's more claw now than man.
Twisted and evil. And then Han at the end when he's dying, "No, I'm your father." No! Wouldn't that be the twist of fate if actually it turns out Han was his father? Just thinking about that out loud, imagine if that was the idea, that Han was so corrupt that Bruce had to go and put him down.
Yeah. I love it. He starts throwing a wobbly now. Just starts throwing stuff.
You bastard! Yeah, he's got the mouth. But in order to do this, I had like a little metal attached to his hand.
Oh, he had to break it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, he can probably kick that and break it easily.
I've made jokes about how many years of bad luck. And it's like
the music here.
I can't think of one. I can't think of one score in this scene in this movie. One track of this movie that I didn't like.
Oh, I love all
They
of it,
all fit, and they're not the same. They're not cut and paste. You can't. They're specific to each scene, so it doesn't repeat itself.
No,
it's just so good. And here, like face to face,
finally found him.
Music finally found him.
And it's just one kick finishes them off. I think there could have been a little bit more with them, but I suppose it's just all kind of just we've seen them have a little bit of a scuff. So in their eyes, one well placed kick finishes them off. But I love how Bruce is like, he looks kind of shocked, you know.
Yeah, he's like, oh, yeah, he's got that look. One thing I'm kind of disappointed in, because I saw in other Bruce Lee films, I think the villain here is a bit too old, and just because he was in his 60s.
Yeah,
he just wasn't as physically fit, and it's like, without the claw, you think, how can this guy be any real menace to someone like Bruce Lee? Whereas in The Big Boss, and especially Way of the Dragon with Chuck Norris, it was an even type fight. And that's one of the things I would have liked to have seen more, a more, maybe in his 40s type villain.
Yeah. Because, if he didn't have the claw, it would just be like, he's completely outgunned, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, it's no contest, which kind of leads back to why this is not my ultimate favourite Bruce Lee film.
Right.
It's up there. It's probably number 2, whatever, but it's just, the only reason being is, it just lacks a bit of that thing where it's like, where's the threat? Because you know Bruce is going to win, especially against a guy like that. If it was another close to physique, close to age person, a little bit older, because obviously for the role it makes sense, then it would have been better, in my opinion.
I suppose an early example of, let's write a spec script for Bruce Lee that is going to sell him to a US audience. Yeah. And you've probably see Bruce do more stuff in these other movies, Hong Kong movies, but in terms of just production values and just sort of having Bruce completely at the center of it all as the hero.
He's missing the one score that I hate, that they took out the saxophone where he does the thumbs up.
Yeah, why take that out? But yeah, so it's now it seems this film will seem somewhat quite generic, but for the time it was applauded for its quality. But as you say very early on in the commentary, that people criticised it for being a bit of a rip-off of James Bond, and it is,
And the typical, the cops come late. I like the choice of ending where they focus on.
Oh yeah,
it's just so ominously spooky. Imagine this a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and they did that, and they focus on Freddy Krueger's glove.
Yeah.
It could be just as spooky. It works. So like they beat Freddy, and they're about to wake up.
Didn't you find a photo, Michael, of where Bruce's trousers are all ripped as well?
He's got an extra cut wound. He's got an extra cut wound on his leg, and I thought, wow, that's amazing, because you never see it in anywhere. And what happened with that? Was there a scene that was cut? Because he doesn't get cut by Han in the fight, and you see him walk away in the wide pose after he's kicking. He's not cut, but there is a shot of Bruce Lee in that door frame there that we just saw, where his leg's been cut.
Yeah.
And the trousers cut. You can see a bit of blood.
Yeah, because his trousers aren't cut in the final sequence, and it's just his chest and face.
I wonder what changed their minds or what happened. There's no explanation of that one.
Yeah, the odd one. Well, final thoughts on that. I mean, for me, Enter the Dragon is still one of my sort of favourite kind of, martial arts movies. It's Bruce is just amazing throughout. Fantastic score. It's hard to say this is my favourite Bruce Lee movie because there's only a small number of them. But I think Fist of Fury has probably the best kind of story out of the bunch, I think, because it's got more of a sort of stronger, something more to say. The Way of the Dragon has like one of the best fight scenes in it at the end, and the nunchuck scene. But I was never really happy with the story in that film.
Me neither.
It also felt like just to get out of Hong Kong, they go to Rome and just shoot so much of Rome to sort of show off that they're shooting somewhere else. But majority of it is actually shot in Hong Kong on these kind of Golden Harvest sets. But obviously, The Big Boss as well is a good film. But I mean, they've all got the sort of pros and cons for me generally. But I think Enter the Dragon has the least amount of sort of problems, I think.
Definitely. Big Boss, again, for me, it's had more. I like it because he plays the foreigner in a new country, meeting up with relatives and a new start. A lot of us ethnics in Australia could appeal to that because we were a lot of like that where we went, especially our parents would go in the 70s to Australia or America and meet up with relatives. They couldn't speak the language and they're struggling in factory work. And so it was very appealing in that regard. And I just like the more greediness of The Big Boss because it's more... Bruce, in my opinion, in that film, especially when he finds his cousin's dead, he's much more vicious. Here, it's a different type of charisma here in Enter the Dragon. He's much more cool, calm, and collect, but he's got that style, and it works perfectly. I think this would have, had he been alive, had he kept living, he would have made himself like a much, he would have done more.
Oh yeah,
I
think even if he had, say for example, he'd finished Game of Death could possibly be his best movie. If it was like
philosophically, I think and in terms of martial arts, I think it would have been the best martial arts, the best philosophical. I don't know how well it would have appealed to the foreign audience, how well it would have appealed. I think it would have done probably very well in Hong Kong.
It probably would have been criticised having little story,
Probably, because if you look, it's a video game. It's a video game of death. It's a video game pre-video game.
It's a game Kung Fu, isn't it?
It's going up. It's going up level by level. It's like, wow. And Enter the Dragon, though, as much as it did have an international appeal, it's just so amazing. And especially back then, kids watching Bruce Lee, because it's all done for real. Everyone, to this day... It's not dated. The martial arts is not dated. Where if you see some of the Shaw Brothers movies from 1970, the one-armed swordsman, they're so dated in a lot of respects because they're just that. But when you look at Enter the Dragon...
Well, it's just the opening fight scene. It opens with an MMA fight, So
think about that. No, I'm trying to imagine how many people would have laughed at the idea. Look at this guy. What is in? He's in Speedos. He's in these gloves. What kind of fighting is this? And people like Dana White from UFC... I think and a lot of people rightly so call Bruce Lee the godfather or the father or the founder of mixed martial arts as we know it today. Because he was just amazing. Like he says, look, in fights there's going to be more than one style. You're not going to box. You're not going to just kick and do that. You're going to get to the ground. You're going to grapple. You're going to do this. You're going to do that.
Yeah.
And competition fighting. See, here's the thing that annoys me sometimes, where people say, "Well, Bruce wasn't a real fighter because he didn't compete." Yes, in a lot of respects, but if you look at the competitions that Bob Wall and Chuck Norris did, some of them were full contact, some of them were point contact.
Yeah.
Where it's basically, the judges say, had that punch had landed, that would have done X amount of damage, so he wins on that basis. And it wasn't dangerously bad. It was held back. It was more technique.
Yes.
So before people say Bruce Lee never fought in competition, hence he wasn't a real fighter. This guy trained with everyone, and a lot of the champions of the time, Joe Louis, Chuck Norris, Bob Wall, respected Bruce Lee so much because he knew about fighting. He sparred with them. He sparred with the best, and the best were impressed with him.
Oh yeah.
So you don't get and the stuntmen respected him. So you don't get an image like that, a reputation among those people. It's the other people afterwards that say, "Oh well, because he didn't compete like Chuck Norris is the better fighter."
Well, at the end of the day, they're just critics, aren't they? Really, I mean, it's the people around at the time, confirmed that he was pretty much legit and they respected him.
Yeah.
So you can't gain that respect for nothing. So
no, they don't. These are people who fought. These are the alpha of their class. The people who fought against knives. And again, Bruce was mostly he was in the street gangs and so forth. He fought with knives in streets in more dangerous real life situations. So for him, his whole concept of as direct possible fighting to get out of the situation. That's why he was endorsed. Again, I don't want to say he was endorsing, but with guns, he was like, look, if a gun's going to stop a fight and save your life, how bad is it in that respect for self-defense? But again, he's one of those people where he was a pragmatist. I always saw Bruce Lee as a pragmatist in a lot of respects, and that's what that shows in his movies, where it's, you know, he had that the vein of the people. He had the touch of the people. He knew he wasn't a built up soft person. He was in touch with the people.
Well, there you go, folks. That is the end of the commentary. Hope you enjoyed it. Me and Michael will be back with some more in the future. Take care, everyone, and goodbye.
See you guys.